today to our webinar on how to troubleshoot remote worker issues with some new Goliath capabilities. By way of introduction, you have myself, Stacy Leidwinger, who leads marketing here at Goliath, and I have Avi Lipp, one of our technical consultants. I'm really excited today as I saw several people register that have been using Goliath for a number of years, so I'm excited to show you some of the new things that we have coming out for you. But I also saw some individuals that are brand new to Goliath. And so in terms of some housekeeping, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we plan to do today. We'll give just a little bit of background on Goliath, who we are, some of the challenges we solve, especially when it comes to remote workers, which we are all working on. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A box. We'll get to them either throughout or at the end of the presentation. And one question we always get is, will this recording be available at the end of the session? And yes, within 24 hours, you will have a recording available in your inbox. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So as we talk about remote workers, and many of you are living this on a daily basis, Avi and I spend a lot of time talking to our clients. I talk to many of the industry analysts, and everyone's trying to identify how can we provide better support now that our remote workforce is predominantly working from home. And when we talk to them about the challenges, it all comes down to one thing. It's really lack of data and visibility. And so there's many different elements that come together to deliver that remote worker experience, and isolating when an issue occurs where the root cause is becomes extremely challenging if you don't have insight. And this is where you get a lot of finger pointing, poor communication across your own internal teams, with management, with application vendors, your end users, and it also becomes really hard to judge, have things that we've put in place to improve the experience worked, or has it not worked? And so these are the things that we want to talk about today. And partially why these challenges really exist, Avi, if you want to go to the next slide, is because there isn't just one solution that delivers an end user experience across Citrix or VMware Horizon for your team. In fact, it requires almost 15 or more different elements to all come together. So first you have your users, right? Your users are all unique. How they use their systems are all unique. Some of them will have applications running in the background. Some like to load everything before they start their day. Some like to play Spotify or audio in the background. They have preference over using Teams or Zoom for collaboration calls. But the point here is every one of those users are unique and their behaviors are unique to them. Then their location is unique. Their endpoint is unique. How they are starting or kicking off, if they're a Citrix user, their ICA session is unique. Their connection point is different. Now that everyone's working from home, everyone has different ISPs. Everyone has different users at home working on that same ISP. People are still using public Wi-Fi spots. Some are still in the office. There's all this complexity around the user, their behavior and environment before you even hit the back-end system. Then there you have your Citrix components, from NetScaler to Storefront to the brokers and delivery services, to the desktops and applications. And we do have some people here in healthcare. You also have your EHR applications. Maybe you're in manufacturing and this is CAD software. Behind that then, you have your back-end components, whether it be a licensing server, Active Directory, profile servers. And below that, from a different vendor often, you have your hypervisor host layer. To even add more complexity, at any one or given points in time, some or all of these components may be on-prem or in the cloud. And so when you get a home user calling in and saying, my application is slow, I can't log into Citrix, if you don't have visibility across all of these elements, it becomes nearly impossible to quickly isolate and prove, oh, your slowness is because of a bad GPO setting or an Active Directory setting or home Wi-Fi, for example. To add to this challenge, and we'll go to the next slide, now you are probably already stressed, whether you're a Citrix or a Horizon expert, in order to get your workload done. And now with everyone working from home, maybe potential cutbacks in IT, you have even more on your plate. I just talked to a managed service provider this week, and when I was talking to them, they said when everyone went home, their workload for their help desk went up threefold. And this was a huge challenge because not everyone understood the Citrix environment. There was a lack of expertise to meet the demand, especially for those coming in and calling. So with the pandemic, with the increase of remote workers, many of you are struggling with that challenge of how do I get visibility across the entire environment that brings together that user experience, and how do I do it with less resources? And this is exactly where Goliath then fits into the picture. So for those that use Goliath, you know that we offer purpose-built software that allows you to monitor and troubleshoot end-user experience issues across Citrix and VMware Horizon. And we do that in 3 core ways. We really help anticipate issues through our threat-based alerting, our automatic discovery and dependency mapping of your entire infrastructure, our application availability testing. All of this is so we can alert you of issues before users are even impacted. Then we provide you correlated metrics across all IT elements that make up that user experience so that you can troubleshoot issues when they do arise in real time. And finally, we provide you the data so that you can share it, integrate it, enhance it, and document that user experience. 1, so when you resolve issues, you can prove that you've resolved them, but 2, so that you can go ahead and really do trending over time and see, have we improved the logon experience? How productive of our users? All of these is capable with Goliath. And so when organizations use Goliath, they come back and tell us, we've really transformed our environment from reactive to proactive. And our last kind of introductory slide, or actually I lied with 2 more. So to that element, I want to highlight something here, and this is really important. We're going to talk a lot about new capabilities, but these new capabilities are only present because of the core differentiation that Goliath offers. It's our embedded intelligence and automation. And what I mean by that is we automatically discover your entire environment. We identify what to monitor, how to monitor it, and then set threshold-based alerts based on industry best practices from Microsoft, Citrix, VMware Horizon, our own knowledge, so that you as an IT pro can address those issues before users are even impacted. This is just an example of where we do that across some of the common failure points, like logon initiation, logon duration, session performance. So for your remote workers, if any one of these elements are stressed and indicating poor performance, we can alert you of that issue. We can also give you the metrics you need to resolve that issue very quickly. And it's because of this now, if we go to the next slide, that when we talk to our clients, and again, I'm glad to have many of you on the phone today, what I hear back to me is after we've put Goliath in, it had the operational impact of adding 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts to my staff because of that embedded intelligence automation, because of the detailed metrics that allow us to isolate and prove root cause, and finally, the documentation to prove across IT, management, end users, what we've solved. So going back to that first slide where there's often a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blame around root cause, I talked again to a client and they said, you know what, Stacey, what Goliath provides us is data, and data is what allows us to overcome perception. And that's what you'd hear from these clients here. I do want to call out for anyone that's new to Goliath, we put some of these logos on because I want to show a couple points. 1, we can scale to meet some of the largest Citrix and Horizon environments, but we also have an ease of use and price profile that allows us to meet the needs of small to medium-sized organizations. And then we do have a stronghold in healthcare. We are known as a health IT standard because we have business and technical relationships with all the major EHR, EMR applications like Cerner, Epic, Meditech, Allscripts. So not only do we provide visibility across user behavior, your connection point, your logon, your backend infrastructure, but we can also provide visibility and metrics around performance as it relates to those EHR applications. And this is why we have a very stronghold in healthcare. We also have business relationships with many of them. In fact, Cerner actually resells our software. Epic, we have technical, you can go to their Epic App Orchard program and purchase us directly from there. Now, with that background, let's go ahead and get started because I know many of you really joined today to understand what's new. What are some of the new capabilities that Goliath is going to be offering to really help you isolate and prove root cause, specific to remote worker issues. And I want to thank any client that we have on the call today. It has been your feedback and ongoing work with us that has led us down this path to introduce these new capabilities. We really were working closely with many of our clients to understand how can we make your life easier across those three capabilities of anticipating, troubleshooting, and documenting. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the capabilities, and then Avi's here to actually demonstrate them in the software so you can see how they work. So in terms of new capabilities, they really fall along kind of these four core buckets. One, we are making it as easy as possible for you or even your help desk to identify if a user calls in, are they working from home, or are they working from the office? We heard this time and time again of, I, as the Citrix expert, aren't always the one taking that first line call. Someone will get passed to me and I go, look, they're a home worker. Have you asked them about their home Wi-Fi? Have you asked what other people are doing on their machine? Have you asked if they're using their personal device or are they using the corporate used device? So now, in a single view, you can quickly see if that worker is working from home or if they're in the office. Secondly, we've provided even an easier way to prove if it's their home Wi-Fi or their behavior that is impacting performance. And as you can imagine, and I hear this a lot with clients, as users went home and started working, they changed their behavior. They were doing things at home, like playing Spotify in the background, having a Netflix movie running on their phone that they wouldn't do in the office, not realizing that is what's impacting performance. So Avi's going to demonstrate how we've made it even easier for you to isolate these kind of root causes so that you can really have a conversation with your end users that not is accusing them of bad behavior, but pointing out the behavior they are having or their home Wi-Fi that they're using is what's causing the heart of the problem. And then one of the key things that we hear from a lot of our clients is, you've got a lot of great data. How can we make it even easier to leverage that data through reports? How can we leverage the out-of-box report so that we can truly identify things like end-user productivity when they're working from home? So we'll show you how easy it is to set up reports in our solution and then give you an example of what some of those reports look like, calling out some that are most specific to remote workers. And then finally, this question's been out there for a bit, and Avi's going to show you how easy it is to set up today. We've been asked, are you going to support Citrix Cloud? And the answer is yes. And in fact, not only we're supporting Citrix Cloud, but we're going to provide alerting capabilities around some of the core services that come with that cloud connector so that you can truly understand, is there any issues that would be impacting our users if we move to Citrix Cloud? I know we've got several clients that are testing it out, some that are already there, so we'll show you our support for that today. Avi, with that, let's go ahead and jump into the demo, and let me remind everyone, if you've got questions, just enter them in the Q&A box. We'd love to make the demo as interactive as we can here today. So Avi, as you pull up the demo, let's go through this first scenario, right? I think you and I heard this quite a bit as the pandemic came across around is, how easy is it to actually identify if someone is working from home or are they working out of the office?
Yeah, absolutely. Hear that all the time, Stacey. Let me pull up the technology. So what I just pulled up is our Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop session display. And this portion of the technology is where IT professionals will typically come, whether they've received an alert from the technology about performance issues or if an end user has put in a support ticket. And to directly answer the question of what Stacey just asked as far as how can you understand if it's an internal user versus an external user, we have this connected via column where you can quickly be able to see, depending on how they connected into the environment, whether it's via NetScaler or storefront server, was this user internal or external? You also have the client IP address to be able to give additional insight as well. With this screen here, again, this populates with all your active sessions or your historical sessions. We don't average or roll up any of our data, so you can always go back historically. And when a user was saying, hey, I was having performance issues last Thursday, you can quickly be able to pull up that user's session. You can be able to search for the user's name right from the top right with this quick filter section. So why don't I just pull up a couple of my sessions over the past couple of days, and once I type in my name, it'll automatically pull up just my sessions. And then when I have one that I want to investigate, I just click on it. What'll populate here is a screen that has all the high-level key data points that went into my session. So from my client endpoint, through my logon process. Then you have your ICA and HDX connection metrics. Then we move into the data center where you're able to see the session host, as well as the hypervisor host metrics, the processes, as well as any of the alerts and event logs that took place during the time frame of my particular session. Now, it's nice to have all those tabs, but typically IT professionals can come up with quick conclusions as to what the poor performance, what the root cause is, right from this screen here. So why don't I, to add on to what Stacy had mentioned as far as, is it something that we hear all the time? One is an external versus an internal, user, is then trying to diagnose what the root cause of the poor performance could be for that user, whether again internal or external. And where you can quickly do that here is with this key performance metrics section right here, and you can really figure this out as far as what the root cause is within just a couple clicks here. I clicked on my session. From here, round trip time, which is the best indicator as far as, was this user actually having bad performance or were they just having a bad day? And what you're able to see here, and this is one of the new features, is to be able to quickly see with these threshold benchmarks where the caution one is at 350 milliseconds and the critical one is at 450 milliseconds. And what these thresholds are is based off of Citrix best practices of any time that a user's round trip time is above, say, 350 milliseconds, odds are that that user is experiencing latency within their session. And these thresholds can be customized, but these are out of the box just based off of industry best practices. And what you can see here with my session is that towards the end of it, I was absolutely having latency at a number of different points. So now we want to understand what was the root cause of that. First place that I take a look at is network latency, which this is real-time network latency from the ICA protocol itself. This isn't an ICMP or ping-based test, but it's an accurate representation of how much was the network impacting my session. And what I can see is when I was having the highest points of the round trip time, when my latency was the highest, network latency also spiked. So now I want to figure out what was the cause of that network latency? Was it somewhere, on my end or somewhere on the data center's end? And that's where I can get answers is with this connection speed metric here. This is the amount of bandwidth that is available for Citrix Receiver or the Workspace app wherever that user is located. So whether they're working from a home office like I was, or whether they're at a particular hospital location or a branch office, the amount of bandwidth available for that user's Citrix session at their location. And what I can see is when network latency was spiking, my connection speed dropped all the way down from about 27 megabits per second all the way down to about 4.2. That's way below the critical benchmark here. So right off the bat, say if I was L1 or help desk, it would literally be as simple as, okay, round trip time is above the threshold, network latency is above the threshold, and connection speed is below the threshold right here. So immediately I know that the root cause is there was something going on with the connection speed at my location at the point of this session, which impacted the performance of my session. So that's a way how you can quickly determine just within a couple clicks what the root cause of the poor performance was if it was from a network perspective. But also from the same single pane of glass here, you have the VM resources as well as the hypervisor host resources where you can quickly be able to understand, okay, was it a resource utilization issue that was the main root cause? And with that, Stacy, that's a quick way to be able to quickly point out what the root cause of poor performance is.
Yeah, and Avi, do you want to pull up the ICA round trip time again? I just want to kind of highlight this for those that maybe are familiar with Goliath. The lines that Avi are showing here, that is really one of the new capabilities. So if you're using Goliath today, you've been able to use the software just as Avi showed. But one of the questions we often got was, how do I know at a glance, especially if it's maybe a help desk user or someone that's not familiar with the metrics, is my user actually at risk based on their threshold? So anything from that yellow to red really indicates that they're probably at the threshold where they're starting to have some issues. If they're exceeding that red, especially for a sustained period of time, they absolutely are experiencing poor performance. So this is a great way to quickly verify. And if you do want to, you can always change those thresholds. So as Avi said, we're leveraging industry best practices, but you can actually go into the software and adjust them Let's say that you've got users that are in a rural area, maybe even globally in a different country, and those thresholds don't make sense for you, you can go ahead and adjust them. All right, Avi, thank you. So next thing we hear, right, we talk a lot about how potentially when it comes to ICA HDX, you can quickly identify home Wi-Fi. But one of the things that I've heard from users, especially as we've gone through the software, is, you know, we know that Citrix provides ICA metrics and channels, and at a high level, we know what it's capturing, but we really aren't sure how do we use that information, right? How do we leverage that information to really identify if there's a behavior at the user or if there's something going on at the endpoint that's negatively impacting their experience. So in this next release, we've done things to really help you as the administrator or user leverage those ICA metrics so you can quickly identify, is user behavior the root cause of slowness? And I think this is one of the most challenging root causes to prove because you're not going to see it anywhere else. And when you talk to users, and I'll raise my hand, I'm guilty of this, you don't even think about some of the things that you're doing. I was talking to a healthcare IT admin, Citrix Pro for many years, and they were struggling for days trying to help a clinician, a doctor, a surgeon actually. And finally, he said something about, hey, you know, because things are so slow, I go and watch like a YouTube video, right? Or do my training videos. So he didn't realize he was adding to the problem. And that IT admin asked him 100 times, what else are you doing while you're working in the system? Nothing else. I'm just doing this. And so you don't want to avoid that conversation, that finger pointing. Sometimes the users get defensive. It's not me. It's absolutely the system. Now you can have empirical evidence that really identifies, is there something going on? And some of these behaviors, Avi will call out, users might not even know. They might have a large print job sitting in queue or a large file sitting in their clipboard. They don't know that. They forget about it, especially home workers, right? They're just trying to get their job done. I talk a lot about careless users, whether it be for security or performance sake. And I raise my hand as being guilty as charged, even though I know better. So Avi, why don't you talk a little bit about what we've done to really augment that experience for IT pros using Goliath so they can quickly identify if user behavior is the root cause of slow session performance or slow logon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are some great points because not everyone is going to follow Citrix best practices on how they should be using, what they should be utilizing within their sessions. So where I just went over to is the ICA and HDX connection tab. And what is in this tab is there's a couple of different graphs. At the top left, you have round trip time, network latency, ICA latency that again have those different threshold benchmarks. Top right, you have again the connection speed, the amount of bandwidth that's available at that end user's location. But to go where Stacy was talking about, this bottom left-hand chart, the ICA channel usage, this gives you insight into end user behavior and what they are doing within their session. Because as Stacy was mentioning, there's a number of different things that users could be doing that could impact the performance of their session, such as audio bandwidth. You know, was this user streaming Pandora during their session? Clipboard bandwidth. Was there a large copy and paste file that hung up the session? A very popular one is thin-wire bandwidth, which is the Citrix display adapter. So was this user doing something that was graphically intensive during their session, such as watching a video or something while they were waiting for something to, populate within another portion of their session? And what I kind of want to display here is on this graph, you can be able to quickly see the different types of bandwidth that are being utilized within the session. So for example, in this particular session, what I was doing was I was streaming a YouTube video while I was within my session. So the thin wire bandwidth then spiked. Okay, I was doing something that's graphically intensive. You can also see the audio bandwidth was out, meaning that I was having the audio from the video be playing. And so both of these coexisted at the same exact time that my round trip time was spiking. Now, there's also connection speed that dropped at my location because I was streaming another video on my iPad at the exact same time that was restricting the bandwidth that was available for the Citrix session. But in also watching a video at that same time, my thin wire bandwidth within my session was spiking. So you're able to use these different data points to quickly understand the bandwidth that's available for that end user at their location, as well as what that user was doing within their session, because all of that plays a role in a satisfactory end user experience when they're utilizing Citrix or VMware Horizon as another example. So those are a couple of different, data points that you can leverage to quickly understand, what the root cause of poor performance is and what that end user was actually doing within their session.
Thanks, Avi. And if you saw Avi go through this, you saw, if you pull up an idea around all the different ICA channels, what's really kind of new in Goliath is we've organized these in a way that makes more sense, right? We're highlighting the top ones, so you can go ahead and select which ones you actually want to display on the screen. Also, if Avi scrolls over them, you'll see that we've gone ahead and added more tooltips. So if you're not sure, what is ThinWire, that's what's populating, you'd be able to see that it is about the graphically intense program. And it's interesting, right? Another question I think, Avi, you and I often get is, well, if I see this, what do I do with this information? I mean, one, it's to tell the user, stop doing maybe what they were doing, whether it's streaming audio or they have a print queue that's been filled. But we also talked to a client the other day, which they actually have stopped allowing Zoom to be used, one, because of performance and security. Everyone makes their own choices, not saying don't use Zoom. But what they said is if someone actually, they find out are using Zoom, they automatically kick them out, right? So they put remediation actions in place that is forcing user behavior. I can't say I'm always a fan of total forced behavior, but if you're getting problems where people are repeatedly doing behavior that you've shared that you don't want them to do, these are the types of remediation actions and scripting that can be put into our software in other areas as well as the product. So Avi, why don't we go back and let's talk a little bit about data. And I think we've got a few slides just to kind of level set before we show some of the new report setup.
Certainly do. Let me flip over to the slides. There we go.
Thank you. So when it comes to really documenting the remote user experience, and we've gotten lots of questions around how do we know if someone can be productive? How active are they? Are they using the licenses? What applications are they using? What's log on time at home compared to in the office? All these questions have been coming up. I think another one that we've heard is, look, we put some money into supporting our remote workers last year. Have things improved since we've upgraded core servers, updated our infrastructure, maybe upgraded or migrated over to other operating systems, etc. And so when it comes to documenting that experience, what Goliath really offers is data, right? And then we provide ways that you can share that easily, whether it be through PDF, Excel, CSV, you can email it, print it. It might go up to management. We have quite a number of our clients today that are providing quarterly updates around log-on times to their CIOs. We also allow you to integrate this data into third-party tools. Maybe it's a ticketing system, maybe it's an event management system, but you can actually leverage this information so that you are integrated into workflows. So let's say an alert needs to be occurred. You can automatically create a ticket for ServiceNow. And then we enhance it. And we're enhancing that with a number of different out-of-the-box reports. And this is really where we're going to focus today's demonstration to show you how to configure those reports. But we also provide templates that you can use to display in Power BI or Tableau if you want a more graphical trending way for the data as well. I think, Avi, if you go through the slides, just kind of calling out here then the kinds of data that we provide with Goliath, and Avi will absolutely walk through some of these, right? But we provide information around that end user's performance, so looking at log-on duration, latency, connection speed. We also have their activity. So one of the things with everyone working remotely, we've had lots of organizations ask us, can you tell me if my workers are actually productive while they're at home? And in some instances, this isn't even to be Big Brother. It's initially when the pandemic hit, it actually was to understand how had work habits changed. We worked with one client and they saw that their employees were working much earlier and later because they were doing a lot of homeschooling during the day. They also ran a study and found that their employees were working more hours, and they were concerned around burnout because people now being at home just never turned off. There's also a number of reports that can show things like peak usage, license usage, application usage. So as you're looking at cost factors and really trying to understand, do we need all of these licenses that we have? Are they all being used? And then we've got system performance that can talk about memory utilization, host performance, VM performance, et cetera. And as I pointed out earlier then, with all of this data, you can share it, you can export it, you can print it. I have a number of clients that have used the CSV file to manipulate it, integrate it with some things like Active Directory so that they could go ahead and show different groupings of users. And then you can go ahead and absolutely integrate it into third parties, as I pointed out, whether it be a ServiceNow or a Splunk or a SCOM, right, an Avanti, a Sharewell, all of these different systems. So it really depends on what workflow you want. But my whole point is here, we can provide you that data so that you can integrate it into your workflows. And then Avi, do you want to talk through a couple of these out-of-the-box reports as examples, and then we'll show them how to get them?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the new field for the new reporting functionality. This one is just, it looks slightly different than for our current existing customers of what you're used to with the reports. And I'll go into in just a moment as far as, the different, reporting functionality within the console. But yeah, here's an out-of-the-box report. This is a popular one, our end user productivity report, where, clients were asking, hey, it's, we're so used to having our workers working at the office and see how productive they're being. How productive are they being now that they're working remotely? And this report gives you that insight. You can run any of these reports on demand on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. You can have them sent out to different business line managers, different vendors, different department heads if you want. And so for this one specifically, what this has is, have the user, the information of, the client IP address, how they connected into the environment, the session host, when the session started, when it changed, so whether that's a logged off, a disconnected, or an active session, and then different metrics around how productive that they were within their session. So you have the duration, how long was their session, this interaction metric. This is the, this is the key metric here where it shows this interaction is basically how much was this user interacting within their sessions, and that's compiled from a number of different data points, such as keyboard input, mouse clicks, generating ICA traffic. So you're then able to see, okay, Randy here, he interacted within his session for 7 of the 9 hours. He was inactive for 2 hours, and his max inactivity time was for 42 minutes. Maybe went out to lunch for a bit. So his interaction percentage was 78% of the time. And then you can use this information as far as, say, if it was a low interaction percentage, ask the user, hey, are you having trouble at home? We're seeing that you're not able to be interacting within your session as much. Is there anything that we can do to be able to, assist? End user experience report, where you can be able to see the overall health of, each particular session. So whether, they had long logon times, high ICA latency, this can all be sorted for, say, for example, the top 20 highest logon duration, top 20 highest ICA latency. You can do this per delivery group, or filter it however you'd like, so that you're getting the necessary information that you're looking for. And then here for the XenApp license usage report, able to see what licenses are being used, how many of them are being utilized at peak times, to be able to plan moving forward as another way that you can utilize the data. As far as being able to enhance with third-party reporting tools, we mentioned Power BI and Tableau, which you're able to then have that information be graphically represented in a number of different ways. So total logon duration over time, see, hey, did we make some changes in the environment that positively impacted it? Average parts of the logon process. So if we're talking about client validation, server validation, GPOs, you're able to see what are the main contributing parts of the long logon. And then here's another one, seeing total connections by date. And you can do this by different delivery groups. So those are a number of the different, whether out-of-the-box reports or the ones that you're able to integrate with third-party tools. Let me show you how to be able to run some of the out-of-the-box reports right from the technology itself. And where I'm going to flip to next is right here, where right from the console, we're under the reports section. Available reports. These are all, some reports that we're running in our lab. But as far as being able to create a new report, it's as simple as just going to new report, whether we're talking about Citrix virtual apps and desktops or virtual desktops. What you're able to do is then say, once you find the particular report that you're looking for, whether it's for performance monitoring, alert and log analysis, you have all the different options that you can be able to quickly identify the type of report that you want to select. We'll just do end user productivity as an example. You have the different ways of how you want to be able to sort the information. So say if you wanted to sort by the lowest interaction percentage, select reverse sort. Whether you want to include just specific users or if you want to exclude specific users, and then the different optional columns that you want to include in that particular report. Here's where you could then be able to select which servers that you want to apply it to. Say if you wanted to just, based off of naming convention, you want to select a particular, set of machines that you want to include in the report. You can just, filter it that way, quickly searching it that way, and select which ones that you want to be able to include in the report. For this one, let's just say, for example, we'll select all of the applicable devices. You have the report name. You can type a description if you'd like. So, end user productivity. Let's use the spelling error there. And then another feature here is that you can assign a report owner. So previously this, would be for, just as for an example, all users that are within the console are generating these reports. But say if you want to just be able to quickly identify just the reports that you're running as an IT professional, you can then be able to select, your name and then be able to just have the reports be under you as the owner. This is an example. How you want to email it, or if you want to export it, say if we just want to send this out via PDF, and then quickly being able to decide, okay, so say if I want to run an on-demand report and just have that be run right now, say if I want to set this to be a report that's run daily or weekly, you can certainly do that. We'll just have this be running daily for every day, starting at a particular time. Maybe you want to have that be run and have it in your inbox at, say, 5 a.m. each day, and then be able to just have it display information from the past day. You can do that. At exclusions, you can always say if you don't care about data from the weekend, you can always exclude the weekends if you're doing a weekly report, just as an example. Then your report's done. And so then it's, I kind of went through some of the examples on the previous slides as far as, some of the type of like the new look of the reporting capability, which is great. And so then from each one of these different reports, you can either then on the right-hand side, you can see that you can just run them now on demand right from here without having to go to a new scheduling option. So you can always run them now. You can pull up all the history of a particular report. So if you want to pull up a report of one that took place, 5 days ago, it's very easy to do so with this new look and feel for it. And so with that, that's what I wanted to cover on the, how easy it is to be able to set up the new reporting within the new version.
Yeah. And I think a couple things as we talk about the data and the reports, right, Avi? And I think you should, there's a lot of flexibility, right? One thing, everything is built in, right? You didn't see Avi go and create custom definitions, custom metrics. All of that, when I talk about embedded intelligence and automation, is built right there in the product, ready for you on day one. You saw how easy it was to set up. Also, you can run these reports, as Avi talked about, either on demand or, right? And you don't have to email them all out. Have them running, but you can, for historical purposes, you can see it. And then the other key element here is for all of our reports, we are not rolling up data. This is providing information at a session level over a historical period of time. And you can run these for however much you wish to run. A big differentiator for Goliath, and for some of you that are using Goliath, is the fact that we can report on that historical data. So, Avi, if you want to go to the next slide, this one is really exciting and has a lot of capabilities, but not necessarily a ton to show because you get the same value. So if anyone is on Citrix Cloud or moving to Citrix Cloud, Avi's going to show in a minute how easy it is to set up, and then you're going to get to see all the same metrics that he showed previously when it comes to and all those same reports. What you do get as an additional benefit is alerting across some of these key services that come with the connector. And so this way, if there's a problem with provisioning the user, if there's an issue with the cloud gateway service, we will go ahead and alert you that there's an issue which might be impacting user experience. And this is something a lot about. Many users like Citrix Cloud. They like that it's being managed. It's taken work great, but they don't necessarily have the visibility. And so they feel very dependent on waiting for users to complain of an issue versus proactively knowing if there's something wrong with that connection point. And so we can provide that with these new alerts that we offer to support Citrix Cloud. Avi, do you want to know what it is to set up if someone uses Citrix Cloud?
Sure. Absolutely, and it's incredibly simple. So where I am within the technology is under the configure inventory column. For those of you who already use the tool, you're very familiar with this most likely. For those who aren't, this is just where all the different inventory that we pulled into the console lives. And so as far as for enabling the Citrix Cloud integration, all you have to do is be able to choose which server that you want to have as far as the integration point. Oftentimes we'll recommend for the Goliath server itself. And then from here, you can see in the Citrix Zen App and Zen Desktop monitoring section, you have this Enable Citrix Cloud feature. You just select that, and then the 3 bits of information that we need are the customer ID, client ID, and the secret, which is all from Citrix, from your Citrix Cloud console. So that's as easy as it is to be able to set it up.
Not much more to demo there, but extremely powerful capabilities. Mm-hmm. So with that, you've seen some of the new capabilities. We've highlighted some of the things that have been there, but I hope the key takeaway is what we've augmented Goliath with is just easier to use capabilities that will allow you to anticipate issues when it comes to remote workers, troubleshoot and isolate those root cause, specifically when it has to do with the home Wi-Fi environment or the user behavior, and finally documenting those experiences so you can really share them with management, other IT teams, other application vendors you're working with, or end users themselves. I know quite a few of our IT admins that we've talked to say they simply take a screenshot, put some highlights to really explain how they can know that it was a home Wi-Fi issue or a behavior issue. We're about to wrap up, so we have a few questions that have come in, and we actually had a few questions emailed to us that we'll walk through. But if you have additional questions, please provide them in the chat. One thing, if you are new to Goliath, we often get the question, how hard is it to get up and running? Really, we can get clients up and running in less than 2 hours. Avi's been helping quite a few do this lately from our last month installations. And we can do this because of the embedded intelligence and automation, right? We can automatically, as I said before, discover your environment. We identify all of those elements to monitor, how to monitor, and when to set thresholds against them. The data starts to populate automatically for you and correlating it at that user session level. There is not a lot of work to get up and running. And then the other big key of this is it is out of the box. All those alerts, all the reports that Avi just showed, they're out of the box for you to use. And then we highlighted some of the additional new tooltips we have, but we have embedded help throughout the product to really allow you to get up and running and have that operational impact of adding additional troubleshooting experts to your team without taking months to get ready and using the solution. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the chat session. We had a question actually email in, and this one often comes about, Avi. It is the question on how are we different from Citrix Director? And since it was emailed in, I think you have a slide that will highlight this for them.
Yeah, I do. And so Citrix Director is a pretty good tool for what it does. It can point out if there's issues, I guess, with Citrix itself. Now, as we all know, there's a number of different components and elements outside of Citrix that can impact end user experience. Most of the times it's actually not even Citrix that's the root cause, but Citrix gets blamed. Now, one of the benefits of having a purpose-built tool that brings everything into the one console is that you can then find a number of different areas outside of Citrix Director that can be impacting end user performance. So everything that you see on here in red is outside of Citrix Director. So, the endpoint location itself, the, EHR modules, the hypervisor layer. So say if you have VMware as your hypervisor, the backend systems, Active Directory, licensing server, the profile servers, and then you have the end user devices such as, network components, printers, and any, end user performance can be impacted by any number of this, not of just Citrix, but any of the components. And to have everything in one console is one of the big differences between us and Citrix Director, in addition to the historical capabilities, where again, we don't average or roll up our data, so you can always go back historically and pull up end user experience metrics to understand what could have been causing performance issues.
Great, thanks, Avi. And as you spoke, Ryan submitted a question. He wants to know, early on, we mentioned anticipating issues. How can we alert on slow logons so that he doesn't have to wait for a ticket?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a number of proactive features within the technology itself. You can be alerted just to an average log, to a long logon time, so that you get ahead of that before an end user has to call in saying that they had a logon right from that session display. But we do also have a proactive, a synthetic Citrix tester or Horizon tester, if you will, that what this technology is doing, it's launching real Citrix or Horizon sessions, testing the entire delivery infrastructure just as though it was a real end user, to confirm the availability of the resources, and also with logon times. And say if there was a logon time of a minute and a half, and you always want to be alerted if it was higher than a minute, this technology will alert you to it. This is our application availability monitor. And again, what this does is it's a synthetic user that's just launching real Citrix sessions, and this can be deployed at various hospital sites, as an example, different office branches. It can be deployed in the cloud to test the availability of the resources from those different branches, or just for remote workers be able to see how's the the logon time for each of these users in geographic areas, as an example. And what you have within this piece of the technology is it's what we're looking at is the central monitoring configuration console. At the top here, it's kind of broken down into two different dashboards. The top here is a high-level dashboard where the blue bars represent the average launch time, and the yellow trend line shows the overall availability at any point in time for these launches. You can then be able to filter this based off date range. You can then filter it based off of locations. So, we have a number of, healthcare clients where they'll have this be deployed at over 40 different hospital locations that is just constantly launching in to test that, Cerner's available, testing that Epic's available. You can then be able to filter based off of those specific resources. So again, whether it's Cerner, Epic. The bottom here, you can see additional details of each of these launches that took place, including whether it was a successful launch or if it failed. So, for example, if it was a long logon time, like the question that was posed, you would then be able to get a proactive notification about this. Say you have this launch at 5 in the morning before end users get in for the day, and you notice that logon times are long. You can then investigate into why, with details of each step of the logon process, as well as screenshot evidence showing you exactly what would have presented itself to an end user. Now, I know the question was as far as for long logon times, but say, for example, there's a failed logon. Say there's a maintenance window overnight, you did some updates to particular applications that led that application to not be published. This would then fail at the enumeration stage, because when it tried to find that application, it wouldn't have been on the storefront page. The technology couldn't click on it. You get that proactive alert and get ahead of those issues before end users are impacted. Now, this is just one piece of one of the proactive functionalities. Another area that Stacy brought up is that we have the ability to automatically discover and map out your entire Citrix delivery infrastructure. And this, what I'm showing right now, is our automatic discovery and dependency map for Citrix. And I think it's a great example of that embedded intelligence and automation, where this will, alert you to, again, logon times. You can then see your entire delivery infrastructure, starting from, with NetScalers, your storefront servers, delivery controllers, and any other supporting servers in the environment. And all these have those modern rules applied to them. So as alerts trigger on any individual component, you'll be notified about it, and then you can see additional information on the right-hand side, such as resource utilization, context-specific health checks, as well as any of those alerts that are firing off based off that embedded intelligence and automation. So there's a number of different ways that you can see, for information on long logon times, including, average logon duration per delivery group. So a number of different areas that you can get that information, Stacy.
Thanks, Avi. And we've got a couple questions from Earl, and these are great questions. So let me go with actually asking his second one, because I think it relates to this, and we'll go back to his first one. He asked, does this tool identify the culprits which would lead to an actionable RCA, so root cause analysis, and how long would it take if so? I think this is, and Avi, I'm interested in your opinion, right? This is a very, it depends type of question. When I talk to our clients, I would say that most of the time they're saying that they've identified root cause in under 30 minutes, right? And so realistically, that seems to be the average that comes back to us. And these are complex problems that they said would have taken days in the past. Avi, I'm thinking maybe you could bring up, for example, I'll continue talking, but if you want to bring up the Logon screen, let's talk about GPOs, for example, right? But what Avi just showed you there in terms of if someone calls in and says, you know, my application wouldn't launch, what he showed you there in screenshot evidence, it actually identifies that RCA almost immediately, right? So it can be under 30 seconds. It really depends. Here's another example, right, on slow logon. So we get over, 33 different detailed metrics that you're not going to find in a tool like Citrix Director when it comes to slow logon. I pull up this as another example, Earl, because here you can see there's a longer logon time. We can identify that this was a GPO processing issue and break it down into the specific GPO that was causing the issue, right? A drive map failure. Maybe it's a printer that no longer exists. I pull this one out because I hear it again time and time again. When GPOs are causing slow logon, that can take sometimes days because literally people go and turn off every GPO and start turning them on to figure out which one is the issue, right? So you might get lucky for an RCA, or it might take you several hours. Here we can show you in a matter of minutes, and we have all of those screenshots. And Earl says this is all great because it's taking days or weeks for them. So yeah, it's, we've got lots of client stories. We could give you more examples, but this is really the heart of the differentiation we're bringing. Avi, anything you want to add to that till I get to Earl's next question?
No, I think you really explained everything great there, Stacy. Absolutely. It's the ability to give you, pinpoint real quickly what the root cause of the performance issue. So for logon times and whether it's a specific GPO that was taking a while, I think you explained everything there just, absolutely fantastically.
Earl's next question is, in our experience, how long does it take the service desk to get acclimated to using our software? Again, it can depend, but let me give you a couple of examples. We actually work with a engineering university, and they have students running their help desk. So they introduce this, and their students change over, every semester. They get new students in. So we've worked with them. They actually have a program where they get people ramped up. They show them some really basic things that they want the help desk to be able to do, right? Verify, is this user in fact having a problem? Verify, is it a network issue? Verify, is it a logon issue, right? And help route it to the right person. Because right now, before they use the product, everything was routed to the Citrix expert. Slow, right onto the Citrix expert. So they're educating them. Now that's students, and I point that out because they really get ramped up with a 2-hour class, and then they're probably ramped up within a matter of weeks. And the fact that they're shifting users every semester means that they're ramping them up quickly. We actually have a client story with a MSP named TerraLogic. They use this for their service desk. And there they did participate in some of our, what we call Goliath care, our training. And we actually have a Goliath care just for the support desk or help desk. And in that case, they were able to get in even sooner and really get experts ramped up. And they were able to go ahead and support with automatic remediation actions, as well as ensure that they got instructions. So one of the things you can do for help desk is not only say, here is the issue and how you use the software, but we can also give them remediation actions and steps. So we can give them, all right, you've identified that root cause might be with GPOs. Here's the things that you need to go do. So as I say, a lot of it depends because it is how far you want to take the service desk, but getting them up and running does not take long. We've got training videos that we can assist. We've had clients do the training, etc. Avi, I don't know if you've been on some of the recent calls, if you've got feedback around that as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we offer is Goliath Care, where we're kind of walking, whether it's help desk to, learn how to use the tool, where it's sometimes showing just, a couple areas that the IT team wants the help desk to focus on. So whether that's just looking at, one main screen that I can pull up and say, okay, look here, if this is above a certain, threshold, escalate to this department. Oftentimes, as I mentioned, let me just pull that up so that everyone can see what it is that I'm actually talking about. Is oftentimes help desk won't have to leave this screen right here to be able to get, be able to route the ticket appropriately or come up with the root cause, on the spot. So it's very easy to learn. We have the Goliath care trainings that we can walk, the entire help desk team through. And again, Stacy mentioned we have a number of different documentation outlets within our support center, whether that's troubleshooting articles or videos to be able to assist with that. So it doesn't take long at all to get used to.
Actually, Avi, do you want to go? This might be good to show everyone. If you go to, for example, the ICA HDX tab and hit the question mark.
Sure. Yeah. So where I just navigated to was the ICA HDX tab, and at the top right of each of these different tabs, there's this help article where you can just select that based off the specific tab that you're on, and it'll take you right to that specific support center page where it'll talk about the different metrics of what is being displayed, what they mean, and more importantly, or most importantly, how to actually use this information to be able to troubleshoot. So the technology almost teaches you how to use it itself.
Awesome. Thanks, Avi. And thanks, Earl. Great question. Next question comes from Deidre. Can you run reports to see just home workers versus those that are in the office?
Absolutely. You can store, if you guys remember that connected via metric, you can absolutely just have the reports be run for that specific, connected via or sort by that connected via so that you can see just internal connections versus external connections.
Carter is asking, do I need an agent on my user's machine to see all of this data?
Another good question. So as far as where we deploy our agents, if you're talking about the client endpoint machine, no, we do not. We don't need to deploy our agent to any of the actual physical endpoints themselves. We do deploy a lightweight intelligent agent onto the session host, where we're able to then, between that connection and Citrix receiver, the workspace app being on that client endpoint, always communicating with one another. That's where we're able to pull in the metrics. So again, don't need to deploy anything onto the client endpoint itself.
And this is the last question. So if anyone, actually I have two, so we'll get back, keep them coming. So this is to the second to last right now is Marcus asks, what data does your Epic module collect?
That is a good question. So as far as with our integration with Epic, we're able to pull in Epic system pulse data. So whether you're talking about the grefs, the web or DB requests, the average block reads, let me pull that up real quickly just in case you're curious as far as what type of information that we pull in. Because we do have a couple of different dashboards, and we built these with, obviously our partnership with Epic, as well as working with some of our Epic clients where, again, grefs, the average block reads, web and DB requests, so you can understand the performance of the application itself, as well as latency metrics to understand the different portions of, latency within the application. So it's very helpful as far as being able to determine the delivery of Epic and then also the back end performance of your Epic application all in a single console.
And just for anyone, if you're using, we mentioned having healthcare modules for Cerner, Allscripts, Meditech, same type of information. And in fact, Cerner has their hosted environment. So we are the only tool that has an agent sitting in their hosted RHO environment that can provide this data back as well. So now I think final is Earl did ask, how easy is it to export data to an external tool like Excel?
Yeah, that's very easy. Through that reporting process, you just select export and where you want it to export to. So it's a matter of just like 2 clicks to be able to do so.
Great, and I appreciate the interaction, Earl. He said, thanks to us, great presentation and tool. We love the interaction. I want to thank everyone else. I think we've had Marcus, Deidre, a couple others as well. So very much appreciate it. But Avi, that looks like all the questions that have come in today. I do want to thank for everyone that joined. Please go ahead and there'll be a survey at the end. Please fill that survey out. It helps us present our information, helps us with your follow-up. And if you do have additional technical questions, you can email techinfo@Goliath Technologies. Avi or one of his counterparts will get back to you. And we do offer free trials of our software. I think we really tried to highlight, we believe, and what we hear from our clients is it's easy to use, but please take the software internally in your